and the locomotive and 5 of the leading carriages were actually out on the main line. So William Climpson had to come quite far forward on Ashburton's platform in order to have a line of sight to Harry Carter. Climpson extended his hand no ball style and he blew his whistle, and with that the second picnic train set off on its high-speed run into the colony's worst railway disaster, some 17 miles and 6 chains up the line at Rakaia. Alright, I'm in Hakateri, Ashburton. This is episode H of Rakaia 1899. The first picnic train left 123 years ago, and now it's time for the second picnic train to leave.
And replied, has anyone a reason why this couple should not wed?
Climpson extended his right arm and blew his whistle, and that was the easy part. Behind him and between he and his guards van was a platform full of people. Some were drunk, some were fighting, and others were there to farewell friends and family. As the train picked up speed, Climpson tried to jump up onto the platform of a carriage, but saw he'd either get knocked down or knock down some passengers, so he thought better of it. He found himself caught between 2 stools, the first getting on the moving train, the second using his lamp to try to stop it. But whilst it was a miserable afternoon, it hadn't yet become a miserable evening. So even if Harry Carter had been watching, as he should have been, then there's every possibility the lamp wouldn't have been made out against the background of the people and the station. Most certainly the second picnic train left Ashburton at a far faster clip than Climpson or Parsons were used to or expected. According to Jesse Parsons, the train was well away, and as Climpson went for the last carriage, 3 or 4 intoxicated people in a rough and tumble with the police and railway porters obstructed him. As the van was passing, he attempted to grab a stanchion and pull himself aboard, but he slipped, dropped his lamp, and had to admit defeat. Jesse Parsons thought the train was doing between 12 and 15 miles per hour at that stage, which, when you consider that's the speed of the last vehicle leaving the platform, it is acceleration, in those days at least, bordering on reckless. So the 2, station master and guard, made their way to Ashburton station building, where Jesse Parsons wrote out a telegram for transmission to Chertsey about how William Climpson had missed his train. The wire between Ashburton and Chertsey was occupied, and it wasn't until 6:48 p.m. that the message was received in Chertsey. So that's 13 minutes after the train had left Ashburton. A similarly worded telegram was sent to Rakaia, and that was received at 6:53 p.m. Such was the nature of instantaneous messaging in 1899. In the meantime, and on board the second picnic train, were Charles Fisher and his assistant Vincent Fitzpatrick. They were both from the Islington Freezing Works picnic committee, and they were making their way to the guards van to uplift some toys that were going to be given out to the children on the train. As events transpired, however, they had to abandon that plan. As they were heading back to the guards van, they received word that Guard Climpson had missed the train. So Mr. Fisher sent a runner forward for the assistant guard, and ultimately Fisher, Burrows and Fitzpatrick hatched a plan of conduct here in the guards van of the second picnic train. It was agreed that some committee men would be sent to collect tickets, whilst Fitzpatrick assisted the assistant guard, Mr. Burrows, in the guards van. Before the committee men left to collect tickets, Mr. Fisher warned them to be careful, when moving from carriage to carriage because he was alarmed by the speed that the second picnic train was travelling at. Charles Fisher, William Climpson and Jesse Parsons weren't the only people concerned about the speed with which the second picnic train had left Ashburton and was now travelling. Seated about 5 carriages back from U284 was Mr. Thomas Danks, who had formerly been a locomotive driver on the Victorian Railways. He reckoned a speed between 30 and 35 miles per hour had been reached in less than a mile after leaving Ashburton. There's a reason for that fast start, and I'll touch on that in a subsequent episode. One of the railway stations along this section of line, either Drumore or Chertsey, I don't remember which, was preserved or is preserved at the Plains Museum in Rakaia. So I think I'm going to carry on the rest of this down there where there's less traffic noise. Meanwhile, William Atmore was on duty at Chertsey, and he would remain on duty until train 21 South crossed with the North Express late on Saturday evening. The first picnic train whistled for a signal, and William Atmore gave it a steady green from the platform in response. It passed through as expected, as normal. Then came an exchange by wire between Ashburton and Chertsey about whether or not there was an assistant guard on the second picnic train. On learning that Burrows was aboard and not having anyone at Chertsey he could put onto the train, and learning from Ashburton that they had notified Rakaia of William Climpson being left behind, William Atmore elected to do nothing other than offer a steady green in response to Harry Carter's whistling for a signal. It's difficult to fault his reasoning, although the Royal Commission did give it a good try. According to Atmore, the second picnic train ran through Chertsey pretty fast by comparison with the first train. It's a downhill run from Chertsey to the bottom of the Rakaia dip. At some stage during that fast downhill run, Guard Burrows decided to signal the locomotive with a green lamp. Counterintuitively, that green signal meant to enter the next station with caution and come to a stop. As assistant, Mr. Burrows hadn't been privy to the discussion between Harry Carter and Guard Climpson, so Burrows didn't know whether Harry Carter knew about the crossing point at Rakaia. That's why he displayed the green signal. He received no answer, and at some stage he decided to go back into the van and invite Vincent Fitzpatrick to screw down the van's brake. Which way do I turn it, came the answer. So Burrows stepped forward, gave the brake a few turns, to which Fitzpatrick said, "Yeah, I can do that." Burrows then went out to signal again with the green lamp to no avail. When he came back in, he checked the tightness of the brake and was satisfied that it was on. The second time he tried to signal with the green lamp, he leant over to check to see if the wheels were skidding on the van. They weren't. And what that means is that at some stage on the downhill run from Chertsey to the bottom of the dip, the van's braking potential had already been activated and was already doing the best it could do to retard the progress of the train. That the footplate crew of U284 didn't notice that braking effort or the green lamp is of course emblematic of the recurring theme of the late shoestring railway, as U284 simply pulled its train and that van along as if it were pulling the skin off a rice pudding. And that in New Zealand at least, the system for signalling between guard and driver hadn't evolved at all beyond that introduced in the very pioneering days of passenger railways some 70 or so years before the Rakaia accident. And even though this episode is through the eyes of those who saw or rode upon the second picnic train, it's also emblematic of the quote-unquote tunnel that Charles Henry Carter found himself in that night as his train made it through the bottom of the dip and as his train began to work its way up the rise to what Harry Carter had more than likely already convinced himself was a vacant main line at Rakaia. But more of that in subsequent episodes as we look at that long ago Saturday evening from Harry Carter's point of view and try to make sense of that high-speed half an hour or so that immediately preceded the fatal cross at Rakaia.
And replied, has anyone a reason why this couple should not wed? Speak now or hold your peace forever, soon the preacher said.
Like, subscribe, enjoy, don't enjoy, it's really up to you. Cheers.